like hip hop, you dig in the crates, you sample, but then you give that person credit, or everyone, and a real hip hop head will be like, oh, I love this song. What song did they sample? But in comedy, what happens sometimes is guys will dig in the crates and just do a joke as if it's their own. You know what I mean? And they won't say, I got this joke from here, there. And people think, a guy like Bob Newhart, his comedy is going to be timeless. It's going to, because people haven't changed that much. Nothing is that different, other than a few references that you may not get. But you'll get them out of the context of the joke. You'll understand what he's talking about. And I do think people go back and they either are heavily influenced, derivative, or just copy. Some comics will just literally copy your old bit. Like this happens in, I've heard this happens in like the newer emerging markets when I travel internationally, and like you and I have both traveled internationally now, and we've both done Singapore, we've both done Malaysia. Great guys, most of the comics are dope, but you hear rumblings from the comics there, and even comics here that, those guys are just dig in the crates and get like jokes that famous American comics have done that people there don't know yet.
Yeah.
So
yeah, because when you're in those places, like who in Malaysia is going to know who Mitch Hedberg was?
Exactly.
So you could easily just grab some of these Hedberg. I'm sure the audience is curious because fans of stand-up will often ask, real fans of stand-up will sometimes ask me about the joke stealing. I think that Carlos Mencia incident brought that phenomenon into the mainstream.
Right.
And I'm wondering, and our audience is probably wondering, like, how many comics are doing this? How many comics are cribbing from Newhart or from old comics who who have been dead for 20 years? He's still alive, Bob Newhart, but some of these guys from the past. How many comics do you think are doing that? Is this a big problem in the stand-up industry?
Yeah, I don't think it's a massive problem, but I do think that we all are inspired, right? And then there's that you cross that line where okay, you're not inspired anymore. Now you're copying, and that's a hard thing to toe. Just like when Pharrell got sued by Marvin Gaye's people, he didn't sample. I didn't realize it. He didn't sample "Got to Give It Up," but Blurred Lines sound so much like "Got to Give It Up" by Marvin Gaye that everyone thought he sampled it, and he ended up getting sued. And so that's the thing where the inspiration was so great that in the minds of the layman, it's like, whoa, this is like copying, and everyone's got to draw that line themselves,
In that instance, though, that it was so close to the original song, I believe that it was sampled as well.
No, but it literally wasn't.
It was
though.
not.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's sort of, it's so close. It's sort of like, well, you jacked a Sam Kinison joke, but you didn't scream when you delivered it.
Right.
Is that okay?
And I think everyone has to draw their own line. I think the thing is that it's okay for something to sound similar because, like I said, we're all on this earth. We all eat, drink, poop, fart, those kind of things. But if it's truly coming from you, it shouldn't be verbatim. It shouldn't, even if you touch upon the same things, it shouldn't be exactly the same, And I think the reason why I say it's commercially driven is because the powers that be, they can't sell you Bob Newhart, right? I mean, they can, but they much rather get a hot, new, young comic and just whisper, hey, do Newhart stuff, because they want to make more money. Just like baseball, they knew the steroids was happening. They looked the other way because they're like, you know what? No one was really messing with baseball. Now that they're hitting 70 homers a season, this is great. We're just gonna be blind about it. So I don't think the joke theft is a big problem.
I want to share an anecdote of something that I experienced regarding joke thievery when I was in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to mention any names, but we had a more or less an outsider comedian had moved to Boston.
I know this
to get
well.
Better. Some of the situation, like you moved to Boston.
Right.
Some of the listeners don't know, but Dwayne started in New York. He went to Boston specifically to cut his teeth because the stand-up in Boston, you can get a lot of stage time, and it's
right.
And the rooms are hard.
Absolutely, and I didn't 100% knew that. I had a job opportunity in Boston, had another possible opportunity in Arizona. I could name like 10 comics from Boston, and I was like, I'm going to Boston.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like that. So we had an outsider come in, and he overtly stole from the local comics.
Yeah,
He wasn't
yeah.
stealing from famous comics from past eons. He was stealing directly from the local guys, and then, making money with these bits, getting booked on college shows, getting booked and making money, going to these places, going to a casino and doing somebody else's act, almost completely. And it was found out with some super sleuthing.
Right,
Someone
right.
went undercover with a
Right.
with a recording device, and when they had the proof that it was true, they beat the crap out of this guy in the green room of a comedy club.
I remember that, and I was out here when that happened.
Yeah.
And I'm friends with that guy, okay?
Still?
And I'm still friends with him, and I'm not taking credit for everything here, but I'm one of the people at least who even suggested go to Boston, because I came to LA from Boston.
Right.
I met him,
Yeah.
and I was like, well, a great place to develop is Boston. So I was really proud of him when he just said, he packed up his shit and said, I'm going to Boston.
Wow, I didn't know this part.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm not saying only me. I'm not. You know what I mean? Yeah, he made a mistake. I think what he was trying to do was like book colleges. Let's say he only had maybe himself 20 minutes of material.
Correct.
That he felt was good.
Yep.
But you go to a college, certain formats you need an hour or half an hour, and so I think he filled it in with other people's materials.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't condone it at all. And I think his plan was to never claim this material as his own. Like, he wouldn't do it on TV or anything.
Mm-hmm.
He was just sort of filling. It was like a little backfill kind of thing.
To get that gig paycheck.
Yeah.
And then never claim that material, but just get paid there, and then hope that it never sees the light of day.
And then you write your own material. It's kind of be like if you had a roommate and you know where they kept their money, and you like they were out of town and you needed the money, and you're like, okay, I'm just gonna go take a few hundred, but before he gets back, I'll replace it, so he never knows that it happened. It was a little bit like that. I didn't condone it, and he still does it. And he's really funny, and he's sort of, and I think the thing is that it was the worst place to do it. One, because Boston people don't play. I love Boston. I love how it's still it's still like a neighborhood. You still have like local guys. Like New York doesn't even have that anymore. New York has been overrun with hipsters from the Midwest. And shout out to them. But Boston is still Boston.
The LA comedy scene is mostly transients from other places.
Exactly,
and they look at it
exactly.
like as a kind of, I'm coming through, I'm going to try and get famous in LA.
Something, right.
Everything else is out the window.
Right. And in Boston, he was taking jokes from like local legends and it's like Hollywood is very ageist, and no one's addressed that, but it's super ageist, even on the writing side. So he's taking jokes from people who this is their thing. They're not going to go to Hollywood. They're not going to go to New York. They're not going to write on SNL. They're just crushing shows in New England. And
that's all they got.
Yeah, and that's all they got. And you're this young kid who you're going to get good and then go back to LA, probably write on a show, maybe get on a show. You're going to go back to New York. And so to steal from these guys, it's even worse because you have all the promise and potential, quote unquote, and to use them, you're already using them as a stepping stone because you're learning how to do comedy for them. Like I learned how to do comedy from watching these guys.
Yeah, me too.
When I was wet behind the ears, we've all done it. In Boston, you sit in the back of the comedy store and you watch Kevin Knox destroy, and you're like, oh man, you just learned so much.
Yep.
But then when you take that step over the line and actually do his jokes, it's just crazy. But it happens, and I think it's the crazy thing about it. I know we're getting off topic. Is you can come back to LA and nobody will care.
Yeah.
LA does not care about ethics in that way.
Yeah.
Like New York will care. The New York comedy scene, you may hit some roadblocks, you may be ostracized, but not in LA.
And of course, in Boston, you could never go back. And he immediately left and never went back. We never saw him again in Boston.
Right. Yeah, I ran into him in Chicago once. I see him out here. It's a weird thing. I wish that he had told me he was doing that. Not that we were besties, but we were good enough friends where he could have ran that idea by me, and I would have been like, don't do that.
Not there. Yeah.
Yeah, don't do it. Don't do it anywhere, but definitely don't do it there.
Yeah.
And the thing is that what's not smart about it is that you're doing. I mean, listen. Ethically, whenever I look at something, I look at it ethically. Would I do it? Would I not do it? But then I look at it just how to do it. Right? Like, don't rob a bank. But if you're gonna rob a bank, here's how you should rob a bank.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And so don't steal jokes. But if you're gonna steal jokes. He could have been doing someone's act from L.A.
And no one would have known.
No one would have known.
Yep.
When I go to, Australia, Singapore, Malaysia, Hong Kong, Shanghai, I come back home. I don't know if these guys are doing my jokes. As long as it doesn't hit on YouTube, and I'm not condoning it, don't do my shit. But I'm just saying that's how you do it. You don't do someone's joke 20 minutes away from where they live. That's not going to cut it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that was a huge risk.
And, by the way, before we get to the new hard thing, I don't know if this, because I'm older than you and I was in the Boston scene before you, but it's pretty legendary that a very famous comic, maybe we could say it, we'll say it and you can cut it out if you think it's not appropriate, was friends with a Boston comic, a Boston legend.
Oh, I know.
Went to England.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Did all his material on a TV show.
Yeah.
And blew up. And that's another thing. With comedy, it's always a race to TV. Like I have a bit right now. That's one of my strongest bits. And I'm saving it because I want to do another special. But I know that too many people have been like, oh, that's a great bit. And I'm like, oh, shit. I got to get this out. Mm-hmm. Because if the first person that does it on TV, it's de facto becomes their bit.
Yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah. And you know what I'm talking about. I'll say it. You can edit it. Like Tony V.
Yep.
And Dennis Leary.
Yeah. Famous, at least it's known in Boston.
Yeah, and if it may not be true, so I don't want to.
Yeah.
And Dennis Leary is hilarious, but this is the story.